Good evening. My name is Ann Thompson from the League of Women Voters of Larimer County. On behalf of the City of Fort Collins and the League, I'd like to welcome you to this forum with candidates running for Colorado Senate District 14, along with Colorado House Districts 52 and 53. League member Sherry Stevens will be the timekeeper this evening. She will alert candidates if they are going well over the time limit set by the rules. The forum is being live streamed tonight on Fort Collins TV, channels 14 and 881. In addition, the recorded video can be viewed online on fcgov.com/FCTV and the League of Women Voters of Larimer County website, which is lw-larimercounty.org. And that will be in a few days. Thank you to the staff at Fort Collins TV for providing this opportunity to present the candidate forum. As moderator, I'm going to pose questions to the candidates who will have a set time to answer. To allow all candidates the opportunity to share their views, we'll be strictly adhering to those time limits. We'll open with introductory remarks from each candidate and end with closing remarks at the end. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, but not for women only. We do not endorse or support any candidate or oppose any candidate. We do, however, take positions on some issues, but only after extensive study of the issue. I encourage you to read information provided by most of the candidates on our vote411.org website, and that is a nationwide website, as well as unbiased discussion of issues that will appear on your personal ballot. Also, accurate election information may be found at votelarimer.org. We're pleased that most of the candidates have agreed to join us this evening, but regret that the Libertarian candidate for House District 53, Adam Shuknek, declined to participate. And now we'll start by letting candidates present and introduce themselves. Please limit your introductory remarks to 1.5 minutes. And we'll start with Ms. Arndt, who's the candidate for House District 53. Welcome, and please share your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Ann, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight and every 2 years when we run for office. I am sorry that my opponent, Adam, isn't here. I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that people deserve a variety of opinions and presentations so that they can make a choice. But I don't have control over that, so all I can do is present myself and tell you what a pleasure and privilege it's been the last 6 years to represent my home district, House District 53, at the state legislature. So I was born in Boulder, and I moved to Fort Collins. My parents moved me when I was 3 weeks old. I attended Moore, Blevins, and Poudre High School. I went to Colorado College, CU, and then on to graduate school at Purdue University. I served in the Peace Corps, lived in Denmark, England, and then Mozambique. In 2008, my family and I decided to move back from overseas, and we chose my hometown, Fort Collins. I have 3 children, ages 27, 25, and 21, and I've been married to Channing Arndt for 31 years. So that's my personal little bio. At the legislature, I've been proud to serve you all in the Business, Labor and Affairs Committee and the Agriculture, Livestock, and Natural Resources Committee, and now it's called Rural Affairs, for the past 6 years. I have also served as chair of the Ag Committee, chair of the Water Committee, Interim Water Resources Committee, and also I'm the chair of the Council of State Governments West, which is our professional association. I also have a leadership in another national association as the co-chair of the National Ag Task Force. I have been elected by my peers to be a caucus chair.
Time is up.
Oh, sorry. That went fast.
Thank you, Ms. Arndt. Ms. Gennall, would you go next, please?
Yes.
You are a candidate for Colorado Senate District 15. Welcome, and please share your opening remarks.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, to Channel 14, to Zoom, for making this possible. And good evening, everyone. I am State Senator Joanne Gennall, and I am running for re-election to Senate District 14, which is most of Fort Collins. For 8 years, I've earned your trust and your confidence, and I would like to earn your vote for another 4 years as your state senator. I've focused much of my legislative activity on fighting for the health of individuals, of communities, and for our environment. I sit on 2 Senate committees of reference, chairwoman of the Senate Local Government Committee, and I'm a member of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. I've sponsored many bills in these 8 years for seniors, for people with disabilities, for first responders, for my LGBTQ community, and for those who have no voice, children and animals. I have lived in Fort Collins for 30 years. I call it home. I came out here from New England to earn my doctoral degree from CSU. And I've spent most of my life in the healthcare arena. Through these 8 years, I've kept my promise to keep you informed and be available to listen to your issues and things that you think are important and priorities that I should, that are of concern to you. I take this responsibility very seriously, and you, my constituents, is who I represent. So I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Please check out my website, joannegennall.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gennall. I'm sorry I misspoke. I misread the district number. Mr. Hockheimer, you are also a candidate for Colorado Senate District 14. Welcome, and please share your opening remarks with us.
My name is Dr. Hans-Dieter Hockheimer. I'm a professor and chair emeritus at CSU, and I'm running for Senate in District 14. Why I am running? I want to prevent that all aspects of our lives are controlled by government. What do I bring to the office? Common sense, honesty, integrity, and courage. Because as Athenian statesman Pericles already stated thousands of years ago, the secret of freedom is courage. Furthermore, I don't make promises I know I cannot keep to be elected. I also love the Constitution and America enough to fight to preserve them. I also live long enough in America that I know that there is no free lunch. Sooner or later, you have to pay for it. Thank you.
I'm going to welcome and ask Colorado Senate District 52 candidate Donna Kipp to share her opening statement.
House District 52, did you want Kathy Kipp or Donna Walter?
I'm sorry, it should be Kathy Kipp. I'm gonna have a lot of typos here.
It's all good, it's all good. Thank you so much for hosting tonight. We really appreciate all the work the League of Women Voters does to put together this forum every year. I always look forward to it personally. So my name is Kathy Kipp. I served on the local school board here from 2011 to 2019, and that was just a true honor, and I learned a whole heck of a lot while I was doing that. Learning more about education and how we fund it in Colorado led me to want to serve in the state legislature. And so I've been serving in House District 52 since, for the past 2 years, since 2019, so 2 sessions so far. It is an awesome job. It is an incredible job. It is, what I really value about being a representative is being able to hear from my constituents and then being able to carry policy that affects people's lives on the state capitol. I serve on the Education Committee for the House and also on the House Energy and Environment Committee. And down there, we've been working on a lot of big issues over the last 2 years, although this last session was obviously very unusual. And we just can't wait to get back, hopefully, and do more. But I really appreciate everybody who's taking part in this forum tonight because, like Jenny, I think that it's important for us to have good discourse in our society. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. And now Ms. Donna Walter is also a candidate for Colorado House District 52. Welcome, and please share your opening remarks.
Hard to hear you, but hi. But thank you very much, Ann. Hi, I'm Donna Walter. I'm running to represent Fort Collins in the Colorado House. That means I want to represent you in the Colorado House. I'm going to give a voice to Fort Collins workers, small businesses, and families. I've done work at the Capitol for almost 30 years. I'm experienced at working the legislative process. I'm ready to go on day one. I'm also experienced as a mother, grandmother, and small business owner. I know what it's like to be a single mom. I know how it feels to struggle with our school system. I know what it's like to have the state destroy your business and livelihood. That happened to me. The state destroyed my business. Now, our government destroys our businesses by the thousands, from coal to oil and gas, restaurants, bars, and agriculture. That destroys people's lives, opportunities, and futures. I'm Donna Walter, and I'll give Fort Collins the voice it doesn't have. I'll give Fort Collins the voice it needs. I'll give Fort Collins your voice. To learn more about me, DonnaWalter.com. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. A reminder that I will be asking questions in an order that places candidates who are for the same office back to back, and every candidate will have 1 minute to respond unless I deem that we have more time on complex questions, and then we'll extend it, but it depends on our time. I'll repeat questions if you need them. So let us begin. Mr. Hockheimer, I'll begin with you. Our first question has to do with Proposition 113 on the ballot. Should Colorado become a member of the National Popular Vote Compact? Why or why not?
No, absolutely no. We are a republic, and I want to we stay a republic. There is no other argument.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I'll go to Ms. Gennall.
Thank you, Anne. I believe the question is, how will you vote on the ballot initiative 113, which pertains to the national popular vote?
That is correct.
My answer is, I vote yes. One vote equals one person, and I think everyone's voice needs to be heard. That's the way we do it here for all our state and local governments, and why shouldn't the presidential race be the same way? So my vote is yes.
Thank you. Ms. Arndt, same question about the national popular vote.
Oh, I hope you have your timer ready, because that was my bill at the House. And I don't want to talk too much on this question as well. But I'm a firm yes on the national popular vote. Article 2, Section 1 of the United States Constitution says the legislature has the right to direct the electors how to vote. And we just got that reaffirmed by the United States Constitution in a recent verdict. So it's not only constitutional, but if we have enough states join the National Popular Vote Compact, the President of the United States will be voted in by one person, one vote, and every single person in the United States will be enfranchised to vote for the President of the United States. As we can tell by right now, we're only focusing on a very few key states. The national popular vote will enfranchise every person in every state, and I'm in favor of Proposition 113.
Thank you. Ms. Walter.
Very much. The national popular vote, I would vote no. You can't let Los Angeles and New York pick the president. People are fleeing New York and California. They do such a bad job picking their own leaders, they end up having to flee those places. Our founding fathers set it up this way to give each state an equal representation, because this is a president and not our local vote.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Kipp.
Thank you. So yes, last year in the legislature, Representative Arndt and Senator Gennall and I all had a chance to vote on this, and I am an absolute firm yes on this. We vote for every other elected position in our country with the concept of one person, one vote. We need to do that with the President of the United States too, and this is a way that we can accomplish that. And really, if you look at the numbers, it doesn't fly to say the big cities will pick your president. or any other community, because in every state we have voters who are disenfranchised. Let's say you do live in California. Well, about 2/3 of the people there might be Democrats, but 1/3 are Republicans. And they're saying, well, why should I bother to vote? Same thing, say, if you live in Oklahoma, which is a fairly red state, as we call them. About 2/3 of those folks are Republicans and 1/3 Democrats. And so why should the Democrats bother to vote for president? Really, I want to enfranchise every person in this country so that we all have an equal opportunity to have our votes counted.
Thank you so much. Now there's a question about the election process in Colorado. And Ms. Arndt, I'm going to ask you to respond first, please. And here's the question. In Colorado, citizens may launch a recall effort for any stated reason. Do you think Colorado should reform its recall laws? Why or why not?
You know, thank you for that question. I think the recall laws are pretty permissive in terms of launching a recall, but I also think that they're the recent recalls, based on that, have let people's voices be heard, and whether they pass or fail, I think it's another way for citizens to have a check on an election. And I suppose in my heart of hearts, I'm not a fan of recalls because the election probably is, has happened within a year or two. But I do think that if the citizens think that that's a way to have their voice heard additionally, I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea.
Thank you very much. And now, Ms. Kipp, could you respond to the same question about recall laws?
Yes, and I think it's an excellent question. So really, we've had a lot of talk about possibly reforming the recall laws, right? And they're written into the Constitution. That's what the people said many, many years ago. I forget what year it went into the Constitution. But I really believe that recalls were intended to address things like corruption of public officials, right? I really believe that those are the types of things recalls should go after. And I really think, whether you reform the laws or not, when people do recalls just because they have political differences, those political differences should be decided in an election. And I think it says something about the people who bring the recalls and about something about the people who fight for their seats. So I don't know that we could do it. It will be up to the people if we are able to, but that's what we do here. We let the people be heard.
Thank you. Ms. Walter, same question.
Thank you very much. Recall, referendums, and initiatives are popular checks on corruption. These laws were enacted because overpowerful interests could control the electoral process. These laws are reforms. These reforms don't need reform. Lawmakers shouldn't interfere with democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall.
Thanks for the question. The recent recalls are groups of people who opposed what some of the legislators that were elected into office voted for, and they happened to vote a different way than some of the groups disagreed with. And usually those groups are not on the same they're either opposite of the Democrat or the Republican, and usually want to recall it just for the fact of recalling it because they didn't like it. The one that comes to mind are the gun bills that came up in 2013 and 2013 in particular. There was a group that was opposed to the way someone voted. Several legislators voted, and they were just listening to their constituents and their beliefs and their party. And I believe that recalls should only be done for corruption purposes and not because the opposite side doesn't like the way that particular legislator voted.
Thank you. Mr. Hochhammer.
I also believe that we should keep the recall. When you figure out that you made an error, you should be able to correct it. So I agree with most of the people which had said before.
All right, thank you very much. So the next question is about housing. And Ms. Walter, you may go first on this one. Do you have any ideas for legislation to help deal with the crisis of renters and mortgage holders who have been unable to meet housing expenses due to the loss of income over the past 6 months during the COVID pandemic?
I'm sorry, I could not hear you.
I'll speak again. Do you have any ideas for legislation that might help deal with the crisis that renters and mortgage holders have being unable to meet their expenses for housing due to the loss of income over the past 6 months and the COVID disease and unemployment?
Yes, open the economy back up. Thank you. Open the economy back up, let people get back to work so they have the money to be able to pay for their housing needs.
Thank you. Ms. Kipp.
Thank you very much. So what we did during the COVID session, this session was very unusual as we had the beginning of the session and then March came along in the pandemic and we took a break much longer than we anticipated. And during that time, the federal government assigned some CARES money. What we did with the CARES Act money is about $70 million of that was given to the state legislature to use for purposes related to COVID. So we did, I believe, about $20 million of that into a fund to help people with rent and mortgages and being able to stay in their homes, because we know how important that is right now. Our state, unlike the federal government, has to have a balanced budget. So really what we need to be doing is advocating with the federal government for more money for states and local jurisdictions so that we can do more for the people to keep people in their homes during this difficult time.
Thank you. Mr. Hockheimer, same question about legislation that might help those who are unable to pay rents and mortgages.
When I see real need, I'm always willing to help. But I mean, it has to be real need, And I'm also absolutely opposed that everybody wants to regulate things which can be regulated by people itself. Neighbors should help neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Keep the government out as much as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall.
The Federal CARES Act did give $20 million to during the COVID pandemic to help tenants and mortgage holders to help pay for rent and their mortgages during that time period. It was $20 million, and it's very important. Most people pay their rent and they don't want to not, but if they lost their job or whatever happened, they may not be able to. The same with mortgage holders. And so it's very important that, we look for more federal dollars, because the CARES Act helped a lot of people, but I believe that the federal government's kind of at a standstill right now with more federal monies coming to help those people. But I hope in the future that we get more money from the federal government to help the tenants as well as the mortgage holders in possible ways to pay what's owed back in time.
Thank you. Ms. Arndt.
Thank you, and thanks for this question. So the federal government put a moratorium on evictions, and then when that ended, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, extended that. Except for they extended the moratorium on evictions, but pushing all the back rent due to when that ends. So I don't know how people can afford to pay for that now, can be able to stockpile money and pay for it then, especially when the income support has been ended. So I think a reasonable approach is one, just what some people said, a little more federal aid. I know that I'll give a shout out to our local nonprofit Neighbor to Neighbor, who's kept people out of homelessness in a very effective manner. As Hans would say, some sort of a local approach to that. But we don't have to rely only on nonprofits. I think we could also think of some sort of scheme where the money that is due for non-payment during a moratorium prohibition is paid at the end of the cycle, at the end of your mortgage, not at the beginning. So, thank you.
Well, thank you all for those responses. We have another question about housing. And Ms. Gennall, you will be the first on this round. It's a little bit longer question and has sort of two parts, but closely related. So the Colorado Division of Housing Development, the Colorado Division of Housing, the Department of Local Affairs, has developed a mobile home park oversight program, a mobile home park oversight program. What do you think are the benefits and disadvantages to both the owners of the mobile home parks and also those who reside in mobile home parks? So if you could give us your perspective, benefits and disadvantages to both of the parties, those who are in the mobile homes and the parks and those who own them. And Ms. Gennall, you'll go first.
Okay. Thank you for asking this question, because this has come up and I have run several bills in regards to the mobile home park issue. First of all, mobile home or manufactured homes, mobile home parks are one of the most affordable types of housing that we can have right now. And Fort Collins has several mobile home parks, and we need to make sure that the tenants are getting fair treatment, that they're able to pay their rent and not have utilities increased for no reason, not have other issues about their rent payment disputed and retaliated against by the owners. I do believe that the owners can work with the tenants in regards to making it a better place to live, and also allowing the tenants the ability to, if they want to, if a mobile home park goes up for sale, that the tenant, if they form an HOA, are able to buy that mobile home park so that they can all work together to have a successful community in there. It is their home, and I believe that it's a very affordable way to have homes in Fort Collins.
Thank you. Mr. Hockheimer, could you respond to the question about mobile home and mobile home parks?
I think, I believe that it's a human issue, yeah. And when people need help, one should help them and not always think of me, how can I get more money and whatever. Because I see one thing that really disturbs me. There are people who believe that everything can be solved by asking for more money. We have at the moment $30 trillion in debt. I mean, most people don't even know what a trillion is. That is 10 to the power of 12. Who should ever pay back? I love our children enough, yeah, and I'm ashamed that we destroy our future by constantly going in debt and asking for more and more money. That is not right. It endangers the future of our children, and I'm not playing this game. The children are very important to me.
Thank you. Ms. Arndt, do I need to repeat the question?
Well, it's about the program. Thank you very much. The legislature voted in, I believe, and I will tell you that our colleague Edie Hooten picked up that issue and really made a bill that I think was extremely. She worked on that tooth and nail. I shared an office with her, and she never let go of that issue. So I wish I knew more about the exact ins and outs of the program. I will tell you that affordable housing has to be part of Fort Collins' future in terms of getting a community where we can all live and work together, where teachers, firefighters, regular people can afford to live in Fort Collins. If manufactured housing and home ownership in the manufactured housing is part of that, that's absolutely where we need to go in Fort Collins. And we'd be remiss if we did not work very hard to make Fort Collins a livable place for people of all socioeconomic income.
Amen.
Thank you. Ms. Kipp.
So a lot of times legislation gets passed in reaction to one party or another party acting in bad faith. And that's what we have here. We have the owners of mobile home parks who have gone in and really made conditions very unlivable. They've raised rates of rent at unreasonable rates, and sometimes they try and sell the mobile home parks out from under people, understanding that the mobile home park person who owns that mobile home park owns the land. The mobile home park tenant owns the mobile home. And so it's a very complicated arrangement. And you can't just pick up a mobile home, despite the name of it, and move it. So what this law does is it puts protections into place for the people who live in mobile home parks. And I fully supported for those laws. I think we passed at least a couple of them, and I voted for them. And I'm working on another one for this session.
Thank you very much. Okay, now a couple of questions on the environment. And Ms. Arndt, you'll go first in this round.
You skipped me.
Oh, I do beg your pardon, Ms. Walter. Thank you. Your turn. Do I need to repeat the question about mobile homes?
Yes, you skipped me on that question.
Yes, do you need me to repeat the question?
Oh, no, I'm fine, thank you. Mobile homes are an important part of our affordable housing community. Mobile home tenants should get fair treatment. Do you know what's not fair? Destroying property rights is not fair, just like destroying businesses is not fair. We should encourage mobile homes. We don't encourage mobile homes and affordable housing by destroying landlords' rights. If you do that, you hurt tenants and destroy affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walter. I apologize. So now then we'll move on to the environment. And Ms. Arndt, you'll go first on this one. What can the state and you as a legislator do to help prevent and mitigate the effects of wildfires in Colorado? So what can you do in the legislature?
Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, as you know, the Colorado State Forest Service is in my district. It's just housed at Colorado State University, but I would say it belongs to all Fort Collins and the whole state. So we can support them in every way we can. They know what to do. They're professional foresters. We need to give them the tools and the resources to do it. They have a good neighbor policy with the federal government that they've been trying to mitigate fire danger for years. And we need to, frankly, they're underfunded and they're overworked, and we need to help them out there. The other thing that I'm personally interested is in water quantity and water quality. When we have a big fire like we do now, we are going to see some serious water quality issues in Colorado, especially down the Puna River. We need to fight like crazy to maintain our clean waterways. We need to push back on the recent rollbacks from the EPA of water quality regulations, and we need to fight like crazy to keep the waters of the United States free and clear. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Walter, can you respond to that question about wildfires and what you as a legislator and the legislature should be doing about helping with that?
Okay. Wildfires are a part of nature. These wildfires are unnatural. They're the result of neglect. Pine bark beetles kill the trees, and we have to practice forest management. Clear that out, or it becomes a fire hazard. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Kipp, can you respond?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, we passed a law, I believe last year, and I don't remember if we did one this year because the COVID session kind of is mixed up, to put money towards helping to mitigate wildfires, right? We want to stop them before they start. We want to do a lot of work in prevention and a lot of programs that I think Jenny was referring to. But one of the other things that doesn't get talked about as much is climate change. And because we have climate change, we have fires that end up being larger, they end up burning longer, and they end up spreading more. And we need to consider climate change and mitigating the effects of climate change as part of our strategy in wildfire mitigation.
Thank you. Mr. Hockheimer.
Yeah, as I said, I'm not opening my mouth when I don't have enough information. But one thing I know, these people are heroes, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And when I, as a legislator, would do things to really give them the tool that they can fight the fires in a way that we are protected. They deserve any support we can give them. They are real heroes.
Thank you, and I think we all agree with that. Ms. Gennall.
Thank you for the question. I do believe that these wildfires that are happening, not only the 4 big ones here in Colorado, but in the western states, are a result of climate change. And we need to protect the air quality and the water quality as a result of these wildfires, and especially with the Cameron Peak fire. But also, I'm a member of the Wildfire Matters Legislative Committee, and we have already are looking at the economic recovery of these wildfires. To date, right now, it's almost $5 million that has to come out of state funding for these wildfires throughout this state. And these are definitely issues. Besides that, we're looking at forest mitigation and wildlife mitigation. We're looking at wildfire technologies and looking at the interface of forests and urban interfaces, and how we can build houses better in those areas, and for fire retardants, construction materials, as well as making sure that mitigation around these houses is properly done. So wildfires are a big concern.
Thank you, Ms. Gennall. Your time is up.
Thank you very much. So here's another environmental question. Ms. Kipp, you first on this one. What one environmental issue is most critical for the future of Colorado? How would you raise awareness of this issue? And what ideas do you have for resolving this issue? And I think we can take a minute and a half on this one. If that's all right, please.
Okay. So I think climate change is sort of the existential issue of our time, right? It is all about saving not just Colorado, but our planet. And climate change has a lot of effects that, as we talked about just now, wildfires, that people don't really necessarily associate with climate change. I will tell you that my first year in the legislature, I passed a bill having to do with energy efficient building codes that will make our structures, our new structures, as we get new building codes built and new buildings built, more efficient. One of the bills that did not get introduced this year, but will hopefully get introduced next year, that was in my my plan of bills, and as part of our plan for climate change as well, is that it's an energy benchmarking bill. And what that means is, and just so you know, when you look at dwellings and houses and office buildings and all kinds of buildings, those are about 25% of our carbon emissions. And who would ever have thought that, right? So the energy benchmarking bill is kind of like, if you have an Energy Star program with our dryer, you go and you look at how efficient the dryer is that you're going to buy in a store. Well, what we want to do is give you an idea of how efficient your buildings are, and then give you a way to improve the buildings so that we can reduce our carbon footprint in Colorado. Lots of other ideas, but somebody else will have to do those because my time is up.
Thank you. Ms. Walter, do I need to repeat the question? Ms. Walter?
Oh, I'm muted.
Repeat the question.
Yes, please, repeat that.
What one environmental issue is most critical for the future of Colorado? How would you raise awareness of this issue, and what ideas do you have for resolving the issue?
Environmental issues is most important. How would I raise awareness? I think the most important environmental issue facing Colorado is water. Colorado could reduce greenhouse gas emissions to zero, and it wouldn't even register on global emissions. The U.S. accounts for only 15% of emissions. It is just wrong to inflict costs on Coloradans for no benefit. I would focus on water issues.
And how would you raise awareness of this issue and ideas for resolving the lack of water?
How would I raise awareness of this issue? I focus on things that we can do, things that we can do something about, rather than things that are so far-fetched, just too far out. The local community getting involved in these issues. Sometimes the state legislators don't need to be involved in everything. This is more a local issue where the local government and the local people can take how they see water and what best fits their needs and work with that. That's good stewardship. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall, one environmental issue and for the future of Colorado, how would you raise awareness and how would you resolve this issue or work toward resolving it? Ms. Gennall?
Thank you. I believe that climate change is one of the immediate issues. It's real, and we have action plans that have been put in place. In the first 100 days that Governor Polis took office, he had 100%, he ran a plan for 100% clean energy by 2050, and Fort Collins is even doing better by having clean energy in 100% clean energy by 2030, converting to solar and wind power, and making workforce development and workforce jobs ready for solar and wind will help in the transition. Energy efficient appliances, energy efficient buildings, as Kathy had mentioned, and xeriscaping. And again, wildlife mitigation to cut down on, wildfire mitigation to cut down on the wildfires that we're seeing today throughout this state. Education, public education in the schools, most of the students are very much aware of this. I think adult education is extremely important on this issue, and it's really an immediate and an issue that we can't ignore. Climate change is real, and those are the reasons that I gave, that we need to make sure that we switch to solar and wind and electric cars.
Thank you. Mr. Hockheimer.
I would like to say that there is a real problem when you have representatives who don't know the difference between climate and weather. This is an enormous problem. And I always mention it all the time. I don't make any advantage of it. Climate change is not a hoax. I have analyzed the data and I know what I'm talking about. The real hoax is the new Green Deal, which our other party suggests. I, as a physicist, can tell you we are not able to provide the energy which we need alone by solar and wind. Nobody knows the consequences, what are going on there. Solar is also a recycling problem. They have enormous problems alone to recycle wind wings. They don't decay easily. They lay around and pollute the environment. The same is with solar. There is many things and materials in it. When we recycle it, it will be in enormous danger for the population. And we will never be able to provide the energy with solar and wind. So we have to think about other possibilities how we can do it. This is really the problem. And we need to understand you cannot solve a problem like this in 1 or 90 seconds. That is impossible. You have to inform yourselves, and that's what I'm trying to do, because most people, they think there is climate change. The only thing which they don't agree on is that it's man-made. And I can tell you it's anthropogenetic. It is made by man. And we have to find solutions. And real solutions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Arndt.
Thank you. Climate change is the problem, and a lot of things stem from that. So I think it's an all hands on deck type of solution. We need the federal government to act, absolutely. We need to rejoin the Paris Accord so we work globally. That is a very tough deal, but my husband works on those issues. We can't solve everything in Colorado, but then you get down to what can we do in our roles, right? So that's another part of the question. So what can I do as a state legislator? I can run clean energy bills. I've already started talking about a carbon tax. Now that might be a better role for the federal government than the state government. I get it, and we'd have to go to the people for that anyway. It's good conversation to have. How do we distribute the cost of what we're doing, right? So the other thing that we can do is sort of what Kathy's talking about. The other flip side of the coin is what can we do to promote clean energy and to make sure that our policies are right for the mitigation of these things. So absolutely, clean building, and Donna Walters mentioned it, water conservation, it's all hands on deck. I think we have to focus 100% completely because climate change is changing our environment, causing us to honestly change it. We're going to have to change our way of life, and we're going to have policies and procedures that go along with that at the federal, state, and local levels.
Thank you all. Excellent discussion. So the next question is going to deal with state revenue. Mr. Hochheimer, I would ask that you go first on this one. What are your priorities for retaining important government services in light of expected shortfalls in revenue due to the recent downturn in economy? And by that, I mean things like fire protection, water conservation, the services that local government provides. What are the priorities in retaining it because we've lost revenue due to the pandemic and recent downturn in the economy?
I have already mentioned that money is not the solution to all our problems.
Are we going back to 1 minute for time?
Yes, please.
1 minute, okay, thank you.
So what I would do first is I will find out what is need and what is want. This is the issue which we have to solve first. What is need and what is want? And there is many things which are want and no need. And taxes and raising taxes don't solve the problems.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What would be your priorities for retaining important government services such as fire protection, police, and so forth that are local in light of expected shortfalls in revenue due to the recent downturn in the economy?
Thank you. We will have a shortfall of revenues. We had them in 2020. We will have them in 2021, and we have to. We're going to have to do some serious budget cutting because we have to make sure that we have K through 12 funding, and we have to make sure we have health care, as well as transportation and others funding from the general fund. But one way that we can do that is from some of these ballot initiatives that will help to help our state revenue in regards to school funding. And that is to vote no on 116 and to vote no on 117 and yes to the repealing of the Gallagher Amendment so that we can have monies for fire protection for our schools and for transportation. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Arndt.
Thank you. So On says, so I'm going to channel Barney Frank. He says that government is the word we use for the things we choose to do together. So on the ballot, as Joanne just mentioned, there are several items that you'll want to look over in terms of lowering our income tax, which is a flat tax, which is regressive. We lower that more, we will get fewer services. If we fail to repeal Gallagher, we will also see the property tax rate go down. Your property tax increase might come from the increase in your value, but it's not an increase in your rate. That will also impact rural areas and the rural services that those monies go to. We are making decisions in our state based on people's voting because of Tabor, and whatever the outcome is the people choose will be the number of services that we get for things we like to do together, like educate our students, have roads, have health care, run our correction systems, and any other services we have. It's up to us.
Thank you. Ms. Walter.
First things first, government has core responsibilities protecting lives and property. We have to prioritize law enforcement and fire protection. We have to provide education funding, but we need to change the focus to students where it belongs. We have to let local communities set priorities for their communities. We're all in this together. The state devastated the economy. The people have to tighten their belts. Government needs to tighten their belts too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kipp.
Well, we are in a once in a 100 years pandemic, and really that is what has ended up devastating the economy, because we have to figure out how to live our lives within it. And frankly, lacking leadership at the federal level is really more what's gotten us into this financial quagmire that we are in, more than our excellent leadership that I believe we've had at the state level. Let's talk a little bit about what happened to our state budget this year. We had to cut $3.3 billion, which is about 25% of our general fund. Next year, we're looking at cutting another $1.6 billion. We are talking about cutting vital services, right? When you're talking about getting down to the children's health insurance program or helping to keep seniors in their homes, what kind of choices do you expect us to make? We do need to continue to advocate for money from the federal government, and please, please, please pay attention to these issues on your ballot, which will affect the funding that we have next year.
Thank you all. This is also dealing with state revenue, and it has been alluded to previously. Ms. Arndt, I'm going to ask that you be first on this next question. Should Amendment B, which repeals the Gallagher Amendment, fail in November, would you support any other measures to assist rural areas with critical services? If so, how might this be accomplished? And again, I think a minute and a half, please, Ms. Stevens. Again, Amendment B, which repeals the Gallagher Amendment, should it fail, would you support other measures to assist rural areas with critical services? And if so, how?
Thank you. I don't know if people watching know much about me, but yes, I always support rural areas because I believe that we are one Colorado. And the stronger we are as a state, the stronger we are together, the stronger we are as a state. So rural broadband is a fundamental inequity that I've been working on for 6 years. And we can see that in the pandemic. It has exposed every single weakness that we have. It's ripped off the cover. Those students out there are not getting a fair shake. They can't log on. They can't get on. Their teachers can't get on. It's absolutely, rural electrification was one of the things in the United States that made us a strong country. And I make the analogy to rural broadband. So yes, I absolutely would support rural areas. I also hope they vote to support themselves. I was just in Lyman and Yuma 2 weeks ago, and everyone was decrying the sad shape of our roads. And they all, to a person, said they were going to vote to reduce our income tax. And I said, what do you think supports your roads? So it is a very interesting idea. I hope people vote for themselves, vote with their own interest in heart, and I will always advocate for a stronger Colorado altogether now.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall. Do you need the question repeated?
If Amendment B fails, which is the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment, how do we help rural areas? That's the question.
Yes.
Thank you. Again, I know that some of these ballot initiatives are going to help rural areas. One in particular is Amendment 117, which is about fees and having people vote on fees. Fees are very important. They're part of the enterprise zones, and one of the fees that helps rural areas, especially rural hospitals, is the hospital provider fee. And so there are, I hope that 117 you will vote no on, because this will provide more monies to rural areas. And I believe that in decreasing the taxes will also, if you vote no on that, that will also help rural areas as well. And one other, and I may be wrong on this, but the tobacco tax, which is up for a vote, has part of it helping preschool, housing, and I believe some of the housing is within the rural areas which need it the most, and also helping K through 12 teachers in the rural areas most. So those are the three other ballot initiatives that you should read and vote on, especially to help the rural areas.
Thank you. Mr. Hockheimer.
I can only repeat that I don't bloviate about things I don't have enough information on. So I can only tell you what I would think. First of all, I support rural areas because in these rural areas, there are a lot of farmers. And I believe the farmers will be soon the most important people in the world. And so we have to support them. But as I said, I need information. So I would try to get information, inform myself, ask people who are expert in this field, and then find solutions, which are not band-aid solutions, which are solutions which work.
I think we're all going to be reading that blue book pretty carefully. Ms. Kipp, do I need to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. I absolutely support rural areas, and I agree with Jenny that broadband is a huge deficit, especially in our rural areas and outer areas. But I think that we need to understand that Gallagher, if it fails to be repealed, affects more than just our rural areas. Let me just tell you a little bit about Gallagher. What is happening now is that there's a ratio of property taxes that have to be maintained because of this thing called the Gallagher Amendment. It's because during the pandemic, our retail, our commercial values are dropping. In order to maintain that ratio, the residential assessment rate, which is the rate that your houses get assessed based on, is also going to end up dropping. And when that drops, all of the special districts in Colorado end up losing money, except for school districts, which will lose it indirectly, but let me explain. So counties are a special district. Counties will lose money. Fire districts, which are special districts, will lose money. Locally, we have a library district. That district will lose money. All of the special districts lose money. Special districts, like school districts, though, are a little bit different. when they get shorted money, they get backfilled by the state. When the state gets that major hit of, several $100 million, which they don't have, your school children will end up losing money because there will be less money to put into school.
Thank you. Ms. Walter?
Did you call on me?
Yes.
Am I unmuted? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to encourage a no vote. I'm going to encourage a no vote on this. We need to protect the residential taxes. Repeal it and they will go higher. Keep residential taxes low. The local government wants to spend more money. They should ask their voters. If they have a need, ask the voters. We've heard a lot about concern for rural Colorado. State lawmakers have hurt rural Colorado. We want to help rural areas. We must stop hurting rural areas. Stop hurting oil and gas. Stop hurting agriculture. Stop hurting rural areas and then demanding that we pay for the damage state government is causing. And don't blame voters for not trusting lawmakers' promises. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now then, Ms. Walter, stay alert because you're first on the next one. And here's the question. It has to do with health. Please give your opinion of the proposed paid family and medical leave insurance program, which is Proposition 118. It's the proposed paid family and medical leave insurance program. What is your opinion on that? And we'll go back to 1 minute.
The paid family and medical leave insurance program, I encourage a no vote on. Governor Polis killed this last year because it was a bad idea whose math doesn't work. This year, it's a worse idea because business is hurting and the math still doesn't work.
Okay, Ms. Kipp?
Well, actually, factually, that's incorrect because the bill did not get to the governor last year. So where we are with the paid family and medical leave bill is that people petitioned to get it onto the ballot. And really what the bill would do is it would create basically a social insurance program. The fees would be paid between employees and employers. A small amount goes into a fund, kind of like when you pay into your unemployment insurance, correct? And then for a qualified condition, such as maybe having a new baby or having to care for a sick or elderly family member, you would then be able to take a certain amount of leave and get reimbursed at a certain rate. This has worked really well in other states. It also helps with things like employee retention, and it ends up being good for Coloradans and good for business. So I fully support this. And in case I didn't say the last one, I fully support repealing the Gallagher Amendment, which is B.
Thank you. Mr. Hockheimer, can you comment on the proposed paid family and medical leave insurance program?
It sounds like a good idea, but I mean, look how many good intentions we had and what finally how it turned out. So again, I mean, I don't have just enough information to make an idea or make a suggestion, yeah, what would be good for it, yeah. I think basically a good idea, but I would like to see more information and inform myself, yeah, before I say anything which makes sense.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gennall.
Thank you. This Proposition 118 has been a bill that has come through the legislature several times in several different ways. And before the pandemic this year, in this year's session, businesses and grassroots organizations, which the citizens had brought forward, were coming to common ground. But then the pandemic hit and we only had about 3 weeks left in the session, and this kind of got lost in the shuffle. There are a handful of states that have tried this. We in the United States are the only industrialized country without a national paid family leave medical program. And about 80% of Coloradans don't have access to paid leave. It's, like I said, done in about a handful of states, and other states have created their own plans. And I really would like to see this on a national level, but Coloradans have the opportunity to vote for paid family leave on Proposition 118.
Thank you. And Ms. Arndt?
Thank you. This is a complicated topic on the Business Affairs Committee. I saw this for 6 years. I didn't see it the last 2 years because, so I saw it for 4, because it couldn't get out of the Senate, frankly. It's an extremely complicated issue. At one of our town halls, I said, who's in favor of paid family leave? And 100% of us raised our hands. The devil's in the details is before the voters now. If the voters return this and voted yes, I am 100% behind paid family leave. Make no mistake about it. The good news about this one is it's statutory. If it needs tweaking, we can tweak it to make it right for Colorado. It is before the voters because of our citizen referendum process. I'm not opposed to that, but I will admit to reading it, being a little concerned about exactly how it would work. And bear in mind, we just passed in the legislature paid sick leave. So all those things, when you look at them globally, you have to sit down and think of how they all interact and work together, especially for our small businesses. I'm all in favor of paid family leave. Let's just make sure we get the policy right.
Thank you very much. So now, Ms. Kipp, it'll be your turn to go first in this case, and this is another question about the environment. So do you think that the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission is fulfilling the Senate Bill 19-181 requirements in the new regulations that are currently being written? And part B of this, do you see the need for any changes in the decisions that this regulatory agency has made so far? And this will be a 1.5-minute question.
Well, that's good because that's a really complicated question.
Yeah,
so when we passed Senate Bill 181 in 2019, what we asked the COGCC to do was to not foster, because the old language in the law said that we should foster the gas and oil industry, which means that we should promote it. And so we've changed that to regulate it. We've put in a number of other things about orphan wells, about allowing the COGCC to have a permanent professional, be a permanent professional group. So now they're paid a salary instead of just being some volunteers who meet once a month. So I think they are making progress. I know that for a lot of people, the progress does not come quickly enough. And I know there are concerns there. I am hopeful. I think that they made some good decisions, preliminary decisions recently, but as Jenny said earlier, the devil's in the details, and I want to see what they come up with. I don't want to have things that are overly rushed, but I do want to have good policy, and I want to have it in a timely manner because climate change isn't waiting. And was there another part to that I did not answer?
Do you see any need for changes in what they're doing?
Well, the great thing about being a lawmaker is that when we see need for changes, if they don't get done what we want them to do, we can always adjust the law and make it more prescriptive if we need to.
Thank you. Ms. Walter, do you need me to repeat this question?
Yes, please.
So this has to do with the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission. And the question is, do you think this commission is meeting and fulfilling the Senate Bill 19-181 requirements in the new regulations that they are writing? Do you see the need for any changes in the decisions that they have made so far?
Let's be clear. Some people want to kill oil and gas. Some people want to save it. People spoke on this issue and state government ignored them. We don't have sufficient information on the pending regulations to be able to have an answer on this. We need to slow down. We need to take our time and set sensible policy that protects everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Arndt.
Sure, thank you. So the COGCC I think their professional board just got appointed this spring, if I'm correct. And, you know, when you make a law, it goes into effect 90 days after the governor signs it. And after that, you know, we prescribe rulemaking and all sorts of other complicated things. In this case, they had a professional board coming, they have certain meetings, they have certain deadlines, we got the pandemic. You know, I am a little bit reticent to jump in and re-legislate what we haven't even seen our current law doing. However, I will say that part of that law also tossed a lot of local control, because that's who we in Colorado, back to our county commissioners. And there's an election coming up, and elections matter, and county commissioners matter, and how we regulate oil and gas regulations as part of that Bill 181 come down to sort of how we think about it in our counties. So I would encourage everyone to look up what's happening in our county, what the rules and regulations are here, and to vote accordingly in the fall, because elections matter. And I would be happy to tweak 181, but first of all, I have to see how it's going to work. I don't like to jump in the middle.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall.
Thank you. I think that the results of the passing of Senate Bill 181 right now is starting to meet the requirements and looking very positive. First of all, it seems like there's more of a balance with the members that comprise the COGCC. Before, the scales were tipped more to oil and gas members, and instead of members of the public or environmental folks. I think it's more balanced at this point. As far as changes, I agree it's still too early, but there was some preliminary results that came out yesterday about a possible 2,000-foot setback for gas pads as well as pump jacks, which is what we have been asking for a long time. And there are many uncapped dry wells within this, within the Front Range and the areas that are affected by oil and gas. And we need to make sure that we know where they are. And also, we need more inspectors. We always do. But lastly, we need to make sure that fines are being paid for emissions that hurt our air quality and our water quality.
Thank you. Mr. Holtheimer.
You see, when I was running the first time in 2016, I figured out that I had suddenly information which you as normal voters never would have. The same situation is here. We have 3 people who are up for re-election, and they have information which I don't have, or Donna doesn't have. So how could I say something which makes sense about something I don't have enough information about? So they have the advantage, and I have to admit it, I don't know enough that I can make a really educated comment about it. And Donna cannot do that either.
All right. Thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next question then. This is a question about revenue, again. And Ms. Arndt, you can go first on this one. And it says, please give your opinion of Proposition 116, which reduces the state income tax rate from 4.63% to 4.55%. and also Proposition 117, which requires additional voter approval of certain new fee-based state enterprises. So it has to do with fees, and I believe this has been referred to before. First of all, I'll give you an opinion on these. And second of all, would you as a legislator support or oppose a legislative change to either of these, which are statutory measures, after the election?
Well, thank you. The one that reduces the income tax, a flat income tax is regressive. So it hits poorest people harder than it does rich people. I'm fundamentally absolutely against that. We have one of the lowest income tax rates in the country. If we lower it further, we reduce our revenue that goes to serve everyone, okay? So if the rich people keep paying less a percentage of their income and the poor people keep paying a higher percentage of their income, I think we exacerbate what I see as one of the biggest dangers to our social fabric, which is income inequality. Full stop. That goes for fees too. Unfortunately, because of Tabor, the state has raised fees because we're not allowed to raise taxes. Now, we could debate that all day long. That's the way it is. That's the way it's been done. Whether you're for or against it, I'm not even sure if I'm for it. But if we want to run a state where we deliver services for things that people need, then sometimes we charge a fee. If we have to go back to the voters to ask to raise a fee based on all the past history, when we've come back, the only time we've only raised taxes on ourselves twice in the last years, and that's both been on marijuana. Every time we've also come to the voters, it's been no. If we pass that on fees, we will get the sort of state that we deserve, which will be a very mid to low level state with mid to low level services. And it's our choice and it's up to us. I would say no.
Thank you. Mr. Hochhomer, can you provide some insight on this one?
Unfortunately not, but I can only say what I always said before. Yeah, money is not the real issue. So what else can you say?
Okay, Ms. Gennall.
As far as 116 goes, a reduction in the state tax, right now with the COVID pandemic and all of the budget cuts that we had made, we can't afford to lower our state income tax. We need that money. We need that money to help with our K-12 education, with health care, especially Medicaid. And also in regards to 117, fee-based enterprises, if we allow voters to vote on enterprise fees, which again was mentioned by Jenny as a way around the Tabor cap and a way to generate more monies, this is going to affect certain services that not every taxpayer pays for. And it will affect Parks and Wildlife, it will affect hospitals because of the hospital provider fee, and it will, and that has a lot to do with rural hospitals. So it will affect not only the hospitals in general, but rural hospitals and the doctors and the other healthcare providers that work in those hospitals. So I oppose both of these amendments, 116 as well as 117.
Thank you. Ms. Walter, do you need me to repeat the question? Ms. Walter?
Yes, please. Oh, I'm still muted.
Oh, that's right. Please give your opinion of Proposition 116, which reduces the state income tax from 4.63% to 4.55%. And also Proposition 117, which requires additional voter approval of certain fee-based state enterprises. And then would you, if a legislator, would you be willing to change, or would you want to change either of these after the election?
On Proposition 116, I would vote yes to reduce the state income tax. We are all in this together. The governor destroyed the economy. We've had to tighten our belt. The state has to tighten its belt. The last several months have brought an increase in food prices, utilities, etc. People need to be able to provide for their families. Proposition 117, I would also vote yes. Right now, state enterprises are an exception to Tabor. This wants to change that to require a statewide voter approval. Tabor protects taxpayer rights and should protect us from fees also. Tabor is democracy. We've enjoyed a booming state economy with Tabor. Tabor doesn't restrict our growth. The people need that money to provide for their families. Trust. That's what all of this is about. Taxpayers don't trust lawmakers to keep their promises. That's lawmakers' fault. Let's build that trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kipp?
Thank you. And yes, I am adamantly opposed to both 116 and 117. For the reduction in the state income taxes, we are already, as I mentioned earlier, we cut 25% of our general fund this past year. If we cut another 1.6, we're going to be heading up to about 40% of our general fund. That's unconscionable, and the things that we will have to cut and the people who will be hurt. The people who will be hurt are our most vulnerable citizens that's who government programs are intended to help. As for 117, it's a very, very complicated and vague proposal, which is very problematic. So let me give you an example of an enterprise fee. An enterprise fee would be the petroleum storage fee, which people who have to store petroleum contribute to. And then if there is a petroleum accident, then that is used to clean that up. Do you want to be on the hook for that? If you aren't one of those people who stores petroleum, I don't think so. That's not really fair. We want people who utilize those services, they're like government businesses, to pay for them. Do you want to have to go to explain to 6 million Coloradans how that works and have them vote on that? That makes it really complicated to do. I don't think so. Statutorily, would we want to change any of that? I really don't think that once the income tax is lowered, Tabor will allow us to raise it. So I think that is an impossibility. And as for 117, our lawmakers listen very carefully to the voice of the people and prefer not to change the decisions that the people make whenever possible.
Thank you all very much. So now we have another question about health and the pandemic. And Ms. Gennall, I would ask that you go first on this one. Please give your opinion of Colorado governor's regulations and recommendations regarding the pandemic, including the mask requirements. Next part of this says, what can we do at the state level to be better prepared for the next pandemic? And what should the state and public health department be preparing now for a possible second wave of COVID-19? So it's a two-part question, a minute and a half, please.
I have wholeheartedly thought that the governor, as well as our local public health department, has done an excellent job in keeping the COVID-19 pandemic at bay. We have been one of the counties that have had some of the lowest percentages of cases, of deaths, and I do believe that the mask requirement has helped. And there has been the time when we were safer at home. It wasn't popular. I don't think any of us liked it, but I think it helped to reduce the number of cases and hospitalizations. And I think they've both been doing the governor as well as Tom Gonzalez has been doing an excellent job listening to doctors, healthcare professionals who know the science, who know the medicine, and masks are being worn now and, going into public buildings, but also proper social distancing, limiting the amount of crowds indoors and outdoors. I do believe that there are some things to work on in the future. I'm very worried about some of our small businesses, especially restaurants, who in the cold weather cannot utilize the outside. So we need to think of ways, innovative ways, to help small businesses should another pandemic or another wave of this pandemic come about, so that we can make sure that the small businesses are helped out, not only with federal dollars, but also with creative ways of keeping their doors open.
Thank you. Mr. Hockheimer, would you like to address this question?
The last time when I counted, police has issued 176 executive orders, and whether the Senate nor the House had any objections. They didn't do their job. It's just so simple. They just don't do their job to control these men. 176, I have to repeat it once more, the last time I counted. So I think, let me say it differently, I believe what we're doing here with all this is really endangering the future of our children. And I love children enough that I would risk my life here, that they have a future. We should keep that in mind. Look what is happening. Look what is happening. Do you really agree with that? I find people are so afraid to die that they forget to live. That is not a way how I can live or how people should live. That's all what I have to say about it.
Thank you. Ms. Kipp?
Thank you. So I believe that Governor Polis has done an excellent job of managing this pandemic. I think that he has shown bold leadership, and it's not always popular to tell people to do things that they don't want to do. And there's always going to be pushback, and there's always going to be people who don't believe the science, and that's where it leads. I do believe that the mask order is appropriate. I believe it is scientifically valid, and I think that people have the preponderance of the scientific evidence is where we need to go with this. When the preponderance of the science says we need to do something because it's effective, we need to listen to that and follow that. One of the things that we can do in terms of preparations for the next wave, I think has sort of been done as we've gone through the process, because we've had a lot of statewide variances, right? Just because things might be, quieter in Larimer County for a while doesn't mean that down in Bent County, they aren't hopping, or the opposite way around. So we are allowing people, different parts of the state, to have different regulations in place depending on how their pandemic is progressing. But I am very supportive of everything that the governor has done. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Walter? Ms. Walter?
I'm still muted.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Let's see. The governor promised data-driven strategy. The lockdowns killed 1,000 people in Denver who died of heart attacks during the lockdowns because they were afraid to get care. The governor destroyed 8,600 businesses in the second quarter. Masks are not effective at preventing the spread of COVID. That's the science. The global scientific data shows that lockdowns aren't effective either. Masks are harmful to workers and children. Fear isn't science. Fear isn't data-driven. I wish that lawmakers would hold the governor accountable for destroying our economy, businesses, jobs.
Thank you. Ms. Arndt?
Thank you. So I have to say that I think that our governor's done an excellent job walking this really fine line in 64 counties, from plains to mountains to front range, desert, highlands, allowing local control within counties with concrete targets of how much you can open and when you can, based on the targets on the accepted variants that Colorado Department of Health and Environment has approved. And yes, a statewide mask ordinance, because guess what? I talked to 1 million small businesses in our town that really welcomed that, because we had a city ordinance, we had a county, and it wasn't until the state made it through executive order, yes, that's true, the law, that they could then enforce that to protect their workers, okay? So I know it's tough, and I know that Coloradans, we don't like mandates, but he balanced a statewide mandate with local control over county with real targets based on science. And I want to shout out Tom Gonzalez, really big here for Larimer County, to doing it right and doing it well. He's had a hard job, he's done it well. And I really think the governor has too. In the future, I think what it's done is help us reimagine, right? Where we work, home, where we live. Sometimes we want to move. How we teach our kids. I think we need efficient broadband. We need to make sure our teachers have the tools to teach the kids. They just don't have the tools to learn. The teachers have the tools to teach. And I think we need to work on supply chain. And then I'm very concerned about kids with special needs and kids who go hungry when school is not in session.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to go to some more general kinds of questions. Ms. Walter, you'll be first on this next question. Is there any legislation that you are hoping to introduce or champion if you're elected? And please explain in specific terms.
I'd like to check the governor's power. There was some legislation that had passed, I believe it was in 2012, that needs to be looked at as far as, I believe he overstepped his lawful constitutional bound on what he's done here. I've also been working on a bill with on education. I believe the tax dollars for each child for education needs to go with the child, so that if a situation like this happens again, that people aren't stuck in a situation. Some people couldn't afford to do anything else, and their children were not being educated. So I'd like to see the tax dollars that are supposed to go for educating the children actually go with the child.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kipp?
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to bring back some of the bills that didn't make it through this year because of the pandemic. So I mentioned my benchmarking building bill earlier to cut our carbon emissions in our state. A couple of other things I had that didn't, finish this year. Personal financial literacy standards, we need to tweak those so that kids understand more about how to pay for college, how to buy a house, things like that. ACT, SAT waiver, we did that for 1 year just for kids who will be graduating from high school next year so that public colleges and universities don't have to consider those standardized test scores. I want to make that permanent because it's been shown that those are really inequitable tests and lead to more inequities. And some states have gotten rid of it altogether, and some private institutions have as well. I also mentioned briefly earlier that I'm working on a mobile home bill along with Senator Gennall and our Larimer County Treasurer, Irene Josie. So yeah, have a lot going on.
Thank you. Ms. Arndt.
Sure. I've been working on and interested in voting and access to the ballot and alternative voting. So we're looking at ranked choice voting. We're looking at some other voting methods. That should be a big bill. I'm also looking at a gray water expansion of, not expansion of use, but gray water use, expanding the use of gray water. Also looking to tweak the abandonment statute of water. So if you intentionally enter into a conservation program, that portion of the water you conserve or use more efficiently is not subject to the abandonment statute. I'm also working to protect organ donors from any sort of financial hardship they may incur and making sure that they don't ever become financially responsible if they're the donor, like one of my friends was. And lots of other things, but stay tuned. I'm talking about a carbon tax or something else like that. and we're going to keep working. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Helkheimer.
Yeah, I mean, there are many things which I would work on, but the most important thing, which I think is a convention of state. When I'm elected, that is one thing which I will basically proceed wherever I can. Because when we want to drain the swamp in Washington, we need to get convention of state, and we have to join the other states which are fighting for that. I have taught and researched in many countries on 3 continents. And one thing I learned, when people in power are a certain time involved in it, and they know after a certain while they have to go back and live with the decisions they make during the time they are in power. They are very careful kind of decisions they make. This I have learned everywhere. And we really need to have that in America when we want to preserve our country, which we love. Convention of state and term limits in Washington.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall.
Thanks for that question. There are a lot of things that we need to do for the immediate COVID pandemic issues. And one of them is make sure that Medicaid and behavioral health is getting the funding that they need now and in the next session, making sure that, seniors are not getting swept under the rug with some of the budget cuts that we have. Running a bill in particular in regard to patients' rights with Alzheimer's. I'm also running a bill that is going to allow closed caption for the hard of hearing in movie theaters, which is a very interesting bill. Also, I'm going to build on the Canadian drug importation bill that I passed in 2019 to include other first world countries to importation of prescription drugs from, say, England, Spain, to cut the cost of prescription drugs from 30 to 50 and even more of a percentage for our patients with prescription drugs here in the U.S.
Thank you all. So now this will be the final question. And Ms. Arndt, you'll go first. Again, it's a general question. So if elected or re-elected as a legislator, what do you consider and what will you consider your greatest strength and your greatest challenge?
No. That's a good question. Probably due to term limits, one of my strengths now is experience, even though it's only been 6 years. You get better at your job the longer you do it. I think we all kind of know that. We have 8-year term limits in Colorado, so we don't get to benefit from very many people who've done it for very long. One of my other strengths, I feel like I am open-minded, and in all my hundreds of bills that I've run, I've only run 2 that have not been bipartisan. So I try to build big, strong, wide coalitions geographically and bipartisanly. One of my weaknesses is, well, there's so many. We only have, what, a minute? I tend to, sometimes I'll tell you, I run out of time. Sometimes it's a question of focus and priorities, and there's a lot to do. And when you are trying to do too many things at once, that's a weakness of mine.
Thank you. Ms. Kipp.
Thank you. So I think probably my primary strength is understanding how the state budget works, especially as it pertains to how we fund public education in Colorado. I spent a long time doing advocacy on those issues when I was on the school board. And also, coming from a school board perspective, we really understand things like local control, right? We want to make sure that our local governments are able to make the decisions locally that are best suited to them, because Colorado is a very diverse state. Sometimes I guess, in terms of weaknesses, there's just so much to do and so much to care about that I think we just end up burning the candles at both ends. I know I've had these conversations with Jenny and Joanne. I don't know when we ever stop working. And I think, just sort of being able to create some space so that we are well-rounded individuals, or at least for me, that's something where I need to spend more time.
Thank you. Ms. Walter.
Thank you.
Strengths and challenges.
Strengths and challenges?
Yes.
Okay. I'm experienced. I'm a mother and grandmother who has faced a lot of struggles. I'm a survivor. I actually listen. The things I'm fighting for come from the people the state forgot. Challenges. I'm very focused on details. Sometimes I have to take a step back and look at the big picture. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall.
Can you repeat that question again? I'm sorry.
If elected or re-elected as a legislator, what do you consider will be your greatest strength and your greatest challenge?
Thank you for that, and thanks for repeating it. I think the greatest strengths are the experience I've had being in the legislature, in the House for 6 years, and in the Senate for 2 years, so 8 years of experience. There's a good amount of knowledge to know, the folks the lobbyists you can work with, and also working across the aisle with the Republicans. I think there is a lot of my bills are bipartisan bills, and I really think that's a plus. And as a scientist, a reproductive endocrinologist, I have my strengths in healthcare as well as the environment. I think we have to keep our eyes out for pre-existing conditions and make sure they're covered, for women's rights and what women's right to choose, as well as looking at the racial and social injustices that we have been experiencing. A weakness of mine, and I have to stop, is chocolate chip ice cream.
All right, Mr. Hockheimer.
You see, I was once asked if I would be interested in a higher administrative position at another university. You know what I wrote back? Not for $1 million. I don't want to lie every day. I can't do that because I want to look in the mirror in the morning. What is my weakness? My wife said I'm not diplomatic enough. Believe me, I try very often very hard, but people know exactly how I feel about them.
All right. Thank you all for that somewhat intimate or professional insight. Now it's time for final comments, and we are going to proceed. This is your 1 minute to sum up and say whatever you want to say. And we will proceed in the opposite order in which we did opening statements. So Ms. Walter, you will go first, please.
Thank you. Here. We've heard two very different visions tonight. One group calls for more money and government power. They say we need more money so government can fix what it broke. They say state government handled the pandemic perfectly. People got hurt, but they don't accept responsibility. That's just wrong thinking. When you find yourself in a deep hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. Our state government caused a worst-case scenario to prevent a worst-case scenario. We can do better. I will help to reopen, rebuild, and renew. Reopen the economy so families can provide for themselves, rebuild the great economy that the government destroyed, and renew the promises of freedom and opportunity for the next generation. I will represent you, the people of Fort Collins, our families, our freedoms, our futures. That's what's on the ballot. I'm Donna Walter. I appreciate your vote. And if you would like to check me out a little farther, DonnaWalter.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Kipp, could you go next, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight. I think it's really important for our voters to see what we look like, especially during a pandemic where that becomes increasingly difficult. If you would like to learn more about me, please go to KathyKipp.com. That's Kathy with a C and Kipp with a K. A lot of people get that confused. But I just want to say, you know, throughout my public service, one of the things I have done, and even before I was elected, I've really tried to spend a lot of time listening to people, because if you listen more than you talk, then you learn something. And I've held over the last, you know, year and a half or so since I've been in this office, over 60, you know, town hall, public listening sessions, driveway hours. I've been doing a lot of driveway hours this year. I invite you to come by. I usually do them a couple times a week. And, you know, just talk and tell me what you care about, because that's what we do as representatives. We reflect the values of the people we serve. I certainly hope you will consider voting for me, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Hockheimer, please.
A great American, Martin Luther King, made a prophetic remark. We have to learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. Now we experience that the second part is happening. Secondly, a very important quote: I don't trust words, I trust actions. People can tell you anything, but action tell you everything. I had once a professor who told me, don't believe me, check it out by yourself. It was the basis of a very successful career, because I discovered things science hopes that wouldn't exist. My advice to you all, don't believe me, check it out by yourself if my words and actions agree with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gennall.
Thanks for putting the program on this evening and for everyone listening. And I can't emphasize enough, it has never been more important to fight for the progress and the progressive values that we've worked on for so many years. Know who your candidates are, know what they represent, know the ballot issues. I can't emphasize that enough, and how much that they may affect you and your family. And most of all, vote. I'm committed to restoring Colorado's economy and solving the problems that we currently face, that being mass unemployment, recovery of small businesses, and fighting the COVID pandemic in collaboration with our local and state public health officials. I will continue to advocate for equal opportunity, for workers' rights, and for racial and social justice. And this is why I'm running to retain my seat in the Colorado State Senate. Please check out my website, joannegennall.org, and please vote and stay well.
Thank you. Ms. Arndt?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters, and thanks to all the candidates for running. I really mean that. I would guess I just thank the voters for returning me for 3 elections, and hopefully this one to represent House District 53 at the Capitol. I will continue upon my previous commitments to public education, the environment, focusing on water policy, and good governance bills. I work collaboratively across the aisle and with my colleagues, and hopefully mostly with you. My biggest goal at the legislature is to represent my constituents. So reach out to us. We're all extremely accessible. You can call, write, phone, text. I say text me, tweet me, phone me, fax me. Just get in touch with me. We will meet with you. We'll be with you. And as Kathy said, we'll listen to you and represent the values of our city. So please don't be cynical. Get involved. Don't forget to vote. And as Joanne said, know your ballot. Thank you.
Thank you all, and a big thank you to all the candidates who participated in the forum. Thanks also, a big thank you to the City of Fort Collins and to the technical staff for assistance in making this presentation successful and accessible to voters. Within just a few days, a recording will be made available on fcgov.com/FCTV, and also on our website, lwv-larimercounty, all one word, .org. And thanks also to the many league members, Ms. Stevens and Ms. Lipke and others who work to make such forums possible. The League of Women Voters encourages all eligible voters to register. Make sure your registration is up to date and to vote in this 2020 election. Ballots will be mailed to registered voters on October 9th. To be informed, please check out vote411.org and also votelarimer.org. That's the League of Women Voters website and the county's website that will help you with election information. Thank you all again, and remember to vote. And good night.